Let's make my forest flutter pattern, which uses 5-inch squares, making it a perfect pattern for your scraps. Now for this pattern, you will need 9 5-inch squares in mixed prints and a half a yard of a background fabric. Now with your background yardage, you will subcut 6 5-inch squares and 12 4.5-inch squares. The remaining fabric will be for your sashing and border later on. Moving forward, you will select 3 5-inch print squares and trim them down to a 4.5-inch square. Next, we are going to make some half square triangles. So with your background 5-inch squares, you are going to draw a 45-degree line from corner to corner on the wrong side of your fabric, which I've already done so. Then you will take one background and one print 5-inch square and place them right sides together and sew a 1/4-inch seam allowance on both sides of that line you just drew. Afterwards, you're going to trim them to a 4.5-inch square. Then you'll just repeat this step to all of your 5-inch squares until you've made a total of 12 half square triangles. Once done, we are going to make a shoe fly block. You will need 4 4.5-inch square triangles in mixed print and one print in 4.5-inch square. And lastly, 4 4.5-inch background squares, and you'll create the block shown below. Then you will sew your blocks together to form rows, and then lastly, sew your rows together to complete your shoe fly block. Your block will measure as a 12.5-inch block. Now all you have to do is repeat this step until you have made a total of 3 quilt blocks. Once you have created all of your blocks, you will cut 1.5-inch wide strips and you will use them as your sashing in between each block within a single row and a 1.5-inch wide border. Then you'll sew everything together within a row and then lastly add your borders and you are done. And here is what my forest flutter looks like all finished. Now for the backing, I am using some scraps in a coordinating print from within the collection. And for the thread choice, I ended up going with glide threads in the color khaki. And here is what my table runner looks like all quilted. This pattern ends up being in the size 14 inches by 40 inches long. And for the quilting, I ended up going with a simple line work. And if you would like to go bigger, go big. 1 charm pack and 1.5 yards of fabric can make a total of 12 quilt blocks plus enough for sashing and the border, and it will yield you a toddler size quilt measuring at 40 inches by 53 inches, just to give you another option. But I do hope you have enjoyed today's tutorial. If you could please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you could be notified for your next amazing quilt project.